I want to welcome you in here. This session is Avoiding Pastor Leads It All Syndrome. Would invite you to sit as close as you can to the front if you don't mind. The screen is a little dim, and I think it will help you, but it's your eyes, so I'll let you make the call, all right? My name is Bill Woolsey. I lead a network called 5-2. The name comes from the feeding of the 5,000, 5 loaves, 2 fish. And we help multiply ministries, start new ministries is our forte. And since 2015 in our work where we really launched full-time, we've helped launch a little over 100 plus, 120 types of new churches, nonprofits, kingdom businesses. It really doesn't matter to us. We help you launch whatever you want to launch. But at the same time, since COVID, we've been working with a lot of churches pressing reset on who they are. And we'll get into all of that here in just a little bit. So let me turn this on, and we want to start out. First of all, if you just landed, if you would please either use the QR code or go to 52.com/avoiding, 52.com avoiding, and tell us who you are, and sign up there for a free coaching, 20-minute coaching call. We'd love to do that, just kind of help you think through things. And we'll also give you a PDF of this whole presentation. So I do not have a handout for you, but you'll get it digitally, electronically after the event. So 52.com/avoiding if that's something that you want to receive. So let's start out with some you here today. I seem to kind of be going in and out. I'm not sure. Okay. All right. First question. How many of you have fewer people present than pre-COVID? So everybody's there. All right? Most every church we're working with right now is not higher than 50%. So most of the churches we're working with are about 50% in-person numbers. How many of you are higher than 50%? You're 70, 80, 100? Any of you back to 100? No, nobody's back to 100. In person. Okay, in person. Fantastic. What state are you from? California. Ooh, you're like God, okay? If you can do 100, that's fantastic. All right. Second question, how have your people changed? Talk to me about how your people have changed with COVID. Long-term volunteers are almost impossible to get. Adam? Non-committal. Okay. Shorter fuses, so the anxiety level is higher. They're just have a lot in their emotional buckets. Doesn't take as much to get them to flow over. Anything else? How have your people changed? Somebody said in a word earlier. What? They're happy doing less. So this is interesting. You're saying they're happy doing less. I would suggest to you they've found new things to do. All right? They found new things to do. And they're happy doing them and maybe not as happy doing what they used to do. So tons of fear. So fear became a huge value in our culture, or avoiding fear, addressing fear. And it really took over a lot of things. So it made people fearful of just stuff they weren't fearful of before, right? Now I can't get on a plane without something happening to me. And it can't even come to church. But if I'm a young family, I can go everything else. But when I go to church, it's different, right? We see that all over the place, okay? So I would say to you that the biggest thing that happened is that your people's values changed. What they value changed. And your ministries have changed because the people changed. I can force your values to change if I force you into behaviors that you didn't usually do. So for anywhere, it depends. If you're in New York State, right? I mean, we forced you into new behaviors for 18, 24 months. If you're in Texas, we don't even know if there was COVID, okay? Just a joke, but it was, and it's a very serious thing. But I live out more, an hour and a half outside of Austin, and people can't tell me to wear a mask, type thing. So depending on where you are, Arizona, I ran into a guy a while ago from New York. He said, we couldn't do this event in New York. So people's values changed because they were forced into new behaviors, and therefore your goal as pastor or leaders is to figure figure out how the heck they changed, because the ministry changed, all right? So, what did you lose? Let me ask you this question. What did you lose with the pandemic? What are some things you lost? What? So there was a comfortable routine you were in, I was in, we were in, and we lost that with the pandemic. What else have you lost? So freedoms, all of a sudden now, depending upon if you're a libertarian or not, where you are on that whole scale, you lost some things. Government has said you can do and cannot do. I have to wear a mask if I travel anywhere in an airport or a plane. That means I'm going to be wearing a mask for 6 to 8 hours straight, depending where I go. Okay, can't do that. All right? What else have you lost?
I think confidence,
Josh.
like I used to understand.
Yeah, you've lost just like, what the heck am I doing? I thought, I was pretty good. I was like on my A game, and now it's like, wow, I'm starting over.
Credibility and leadership.
Yeah, so you guys in leading churches, you can't win, or at least you couldn't win for about 18 months, because if you said, we're going to do this way, half your people said no, and if you said we're going to do this way, half the people said no, and so just the credibility, it's like, where's that coming from, all right? I would say, let me tell you what I think you also lost. Let me ask this question. How many of you financially are fine? Okay, so about 2/3 of you. For the most part, what we saw is if your church was pretty healthy going into COVID, your income went up. Because your faithful said, I'm here, I want to see this thing. So therefore, most of the healthier churches don't have a financial impetus to fix this, because finances are fine. But what you lost was your outer ring of growth. You lost all the people who were kicking the tires in the church, who were trying to figure out if this is something they would have belonged to. And a lot of them were your young families. And so they just said, you know what, for a year and a half I've watched on TV, it's pretty cool, my kids can eat this and watch the thing, and we can go outside in the park and play, and they developed a new behavior and new values, and you've lost that, all right? That's at least that's what we're seeing generally around the country. And so if you're evangelistic at all in your heart and you want to see some growth happen, that hurts you. Finances are fine, but it's the people thing that hurts. And it may be that you have to help your leaders see that as well, okay? All right, last one. What have you tried before? So you are all here for avoiding pastor leads it all syndrome. What have you tried to fix some of that? Or have you tried anything here in the last 6, 12 months to, I'm assuming something like finding more volunteers or finding more leaders or something like that? Have you tried anything? This is a slam dunk, okay? No. Okay, well, think on that, all right? So let's go through a few things. So this is, you're probably going to have a hard time seeing this. This is how Americans relate to Christianity, and this was from 2020. So this was toward the end of the first year of COVID, put out by Barna, and I'm going to walk you through this red line that took a dive in about 2012. This red line is the percent of Christians, percent of people in the United States who self-identified as Christian, practicing Christian. So red line is practicing Christian, and for about a decade, from 2000 to 2009, it pretty well stayed around mid-40s and above, 40% of people. But from 2009 to 2020, it dropped from 50% to 25%. So over 11 years, the percentage of people in the United States who said, I'm Christian, I'm practicing Christian, went down by 50%. And COVID has made it worse. What grew, though, what really increased in that time were the non-practicing Christians. You can barely see the blue line here. It went up, so non-practicing Christians gained off of that loss, and then so did some non-Christian numbers. People just kind of said, it's just not working for me. So it's a huge reason we exist in our network. Now, you're also going to know, that people are less attracted to church. We all saw this before COVID hit. Attendance was already going down. Matter of fact, we talked with the church last week. They surveyed their children's attendance. So this church does not take attendance in worship, but it takes attendance in all its children's ministries. It's the best way it can tell who's there and who's not there. And they found that in December and January, how many times did the children attend church? Counting Christmas in December and January, how many times, you think? 2? 3? 2? 1. One time. So they found that in their families, the average attendance was 1 time out of 8, plus Christmas attendance. So church is just less attractive. They're less attracted. And now, in our culture, church is non-essential. So people might have felt that before, but it was never in our vernacular. It wasn't in our vocabulary. So now when I think about what's essential in my life, church doesn't appear there, okay? So I'm having to deal with that and having to combat that. Staff are exhausted, sure. Anybody exhausted? Again, just a lot of exhaustion and unsure, lack of confidence, as Josh said. So you need, though, I would suggest to you, before you say, let's go do X, let's kind of regroup and let's look at what we have been doing and just press pause, press reset. But this is a really powerful thing. People are very attracted to community and cause. The millennial and younger generations are uber cause driven, and they want to make a difference. We still live local. We might shop Amazon, we might Zoom, but we live local. So as you and your ministry is thinking, to really think about that value that's still there, okay? This is a fascinating picture from Barna as well, recent study, and it talks about Gen Z is at the top here. Have you already put effort in developing your gifts in some way? In other words, have you done some work in discovering who you are as an individual and how you want to be serving, how you want to live your life? And you're going to see that the younger you are, the more work you've thought about it. 93% Gen Z, running boomers, only about 60%. So as you in your ministry are thinking about, again, voiding leads at all, you actually, if you have a ministry that is connected into millennial and younger, you've got individuals most likely who have thought about how they could make a difference or want to make a difference in the world. Now, here's a great opportunity. While most people believe Jesus really lived, this is fascinating. Over 85% of the people in the United States believe Jesus was a historical figure. I mean, think about that. They don't think he was a myth. They actually think he really lived. If you're Muslim, you think he's pretty cool right next to Muhammad. If you're Hindu, you think he's a god, just one of a zillion, okay? So he has a lot of street cred when you're talking about real, but at the same time, most people believe he was not God. So that's about 50%. So the gap is he really lived, but he wasn't God. So the opportunity for us is when we're working in community and working with people is we could actually start from a position of Jesus without being too kooky, all right? Now, this particular, again, our name, Feeding the 5,000, comes from 5 loaves, 2 fish, out of Mark chapter 6. And in that particular account, Mark only records Jesus speaking twice. He records his words. Both times they're Greek imperatives. The first one is, you give them something to eat. And the second is go and see when they say we don't have enough resources. I lay this before you because as you are looking at your ministry and saying, I can't keep leading this, I need to find other people to help lead it. We know that they're there. The point is, how do you discover them and how do you get them into the game in a way they want to be in the game? All right? And our goal when we work with churches or ministries, this is the visual goal that we're trying to create. We're looking to help you create ministries that are compassion-driven. Almost everything we've helped start has some kind of a compassion feel to it. But it's led by individuals from their passion and who they are in Jesus, as opposed to you telling them what to do. The younger the generation is, the less they want you to tell them what to do. All right? So the proposal that we have for you today, as you're thinking about avoiding pastor leads at all, is, are you willing to kind of see what some grassroots people want to be doing in your ministry, as opposed to you saying, here's what we need to be doing. As the culture went through the change it went through, how many of you have ever seen the transition? There's a scale you can look at when people are most open to change, and going to jail is like one of the times it's most traumatic. When you go to jail, you're open to hearing something, okay? Divorce is very traumatic. Death of a child is very traumatic. So just think about it. Your congregation, your ministry, they've been forced through change, and they're also open to solutions. And so this is an opportunity for us, because they're all realizing life shifted and they're not sure how to make it work again, okay? So what we're looking to do, and the picture we want to have in front of you, is how you could be leveraging leaders in order to re-engage them and to jumpstart things in your ministry that maybe are going to be different than what they were before, all right? And when you have a ministry that does this, you're going to see that this blesses those outside the church. It's going to reach people who maybe will never show up. The other thing, when you look at this picture, and I know you're already doing this, so how many of you count your online worship numbers? Do any of you count your online worship numbers? What's the multiplier you use? Luke, what's the multiplier you use?
Well, it's a whole lot of, we don't track the Facebook or watching. We actually developed our app that they can check in if they were watching online. So that's the only metric.
Okay, so Luke and his ministry here in Mesa said we're only going to go through the app and count those numbers. Some guys I know are, 1.3 Facebook, numbers. And so my point is, you all started measuring new things. You probably, most of you didn't measure online attendance before, but now you do. In part because we want to know who all's there, in part because it helps us feel like we haven't totally lost everybody, So I would suggest to you, this is also a prime time for you to think about what you're going to measure. And this picture provides you some opportunity to think about how you're going to measure gospel expressions, gospel engagement. That it's not all just going to happen in your sanctuary, right? How could we be leveraging some people to help reach new people for Jesus and extend our ministry into communities and feel that's ministry, that's legitimate, all right? Even if they don't just show up on Sunday morning. This is legitimate ministry. We're bringing Jesus to them. So it blesses those outside the church. It inspires your members when you're engaged in community. And it also then attracts unbelievers because they go, well, this is a legit place. They're doing something. They're not just wanting my money or preaching or whatever it is. All right. So question for you. On a scale of 1 to 7, 1 being, I'm not so sure, 7 being high trust. When it comes to trusting your lay people, where would you fall? Any ones? You have to be really bold to raise your hand here, okay? What?
Trust with what?
So the question is, trust with what? Trust with direction. Trust, you feel that you're going to listen to them. If they come to you and say, you know what, I think we really ought to do this, and are you going to entrust them in ministry? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 3, anybody a 3? 1 to 7. 4, 5, some 5s, 6s, okay. 7s, any 7s? Okay. So this works well when you have a high trust culture. All right? It doesn't work well, and probably by the fact that your best practices, you're more high trust than not, okay? But it doesn't work well if you don't trust your people. We just, working with one of the churches outside of Austin, Hill Country Fellowship, non-denom church, And it took us a lot to convince them that they ought to get a workshop and get all their leaders in the room, because they weren't used to trusting their leaders for where the church ought to go. It was very much a core leadership, 3 to 4 people. And we really pushed them and said, look, this is a new day. You ought to invite them into this, and let's listen to them and listen to what God is saying through them. And it's been a very powerful experience for them. But to help them understand, we want to trust the people that God is calling home here. So, when you're thinking then about avoiding pastor leads it all syndrome, I really want you to think about your goal is, how do we help people as they are new, they're changed? How do we help them clarify, equip, and then activate the calling that they have in Jesus, because their lives changed and they're new people? All right? You've got to see them as different. They're different than who they were. And that 3-step is very, very important as you're developing your discipleship pathway, your new pathway, or whatever it may be in your ministry. Now, what I'm going to show you today, I'm going to tell you what the steps are that we do, and you can do them. All right? These 5 steps are not that hard. You just have to do them. All right? And this is part of a proven step-by-step process. We've iterated this. It's come out of about 25 years of ministry, of what I did in leading growing churches, but also in our network, what we've done in all sizes of organizations and congregations. This is what we do. This is kind of the heart of what we do. And this right here that you're looking at, dimly, is about a 6 to 9 month process that if we come in and work with the church, that we're going to help you clarify, equip, and activate your calling as a congregation, your leaders' callings, your teams, and we basically restart you in this new post-COVID era. But the section that we're going to talk about in this workshop is in the center, and this is where we identify and recruit what we call sacred starters. Because if you're looking for people to help share leadership of ministry, you're looking for a certain kind of person. All right? And at times, what you and I, if we're not careful, we'll default to doers instead of defaulting to leaders. We want to default to leaders. And because of where the church is right now in the United States, you want to default to people who can help start or grow something. If you default to people who are just managers, they're going to manage the 4 people you have, or the 3 people. What you're looking for now in this era is, how do we find and enlist people who love to go and grow, all right? They love to do feeding of the 5,000 kind of stuff. That's who you're looking for. So what we're going to talk about today is this section. Now, the profile, first of all, we're going to start with the starter profile, okay? I think I'm going to close the door. That's a great idea. Except the door's not going to close. Okay. So the starter profile, this is the type of a person that you are looking for. So the first one is, they're passionate about a group of people. This is somebody in your congregation who has demonstrated they love children, or they love single moms, or they really have a heart for dads who are commuters, and it doesn't matter. What's important for you as a leader right now is not to impose what your congregation's going to do, but rather to enlist people to help you figure out what you're going to do. All right? So it's really critical that you don't do a top-down, well, we don't do that. Just right now, just let it be, and let's see what happens out of what God wants to do there. Secondly, they have an idea for how to help them. And they've said, well, I've always thought about X. Right now we're working with the church in this part of the process, and they said, well, what if, I don't remember exactly what the example was, but they said, what if they want to do X? And I was like, hey, if they want to do X and they can gather a team to do it, and it reaches new groups of people, so be it. And the issue is, well, what if it's going to cost us a lot of money? Like, it's only going to cost you money when it gets big enough to cost you money. So don't worry about the money right now, okay? Well, are we all going to have to manage all these new ministries? Well, praise God if you had new ministries, but you're not going to have to manage that many, all right? So we'll figure that out. So the point is, again, one of you said earlier, we're all more fearful than we were. If at all possible, let's let faith over fear in this season. Let that rule, and let's set aside the fear for now. So they have an idea about how to help people. They're solutions oriented. They don't get as hung up on the negative side of things. So they're much more prone to think about what ifs. And hopefully then they've started stuff in the past. They might have started a Bible study, a women's something, or they could have started a business. It doesn't really matter. So they've demonstrated some starter characteristics that you're aware of. This is who you're looking for, you're praying for. And the first part of this, that's that profile. We want you to really commit this to prayer. So if you're serious about this in your ministry, then it needs to own some real estate in your ministry. And I would suggest to you that it ought to be a prominent part of your communication in your ministry. So the first thing is really, you're going to read through each of those traits. This again is all in the PDF. If you go to 52.com/avoiding, you'll get all this in writing. But what you want to do is start just privately in your office, at home, whatever you're doing, read through that profile list, and you're going to start praying over those items. You're going to ask God to bring to mind people who fit this profile. They don't have to be a part of your church. They might be somebody in your neighborhood or your community, okay? But especially if they're a part of your church. Read through each trait again, and then write the names of the people Jesus brings to mind and note their strengths. So this is a journaling exercise for you as a leader to start this process of saying, okay, God, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I'm praying for as we come out of this season and we enter a new reality in our church, in our community. So you're going to start the whole thing with prayer, and then you're going to move to invite others to join you. So here's where you're going to gather your key leaders that you do have. Could be staff, it could be your elected leaders, whoever it is, and you're going to invite them to now go through the same process you're going through. I always like to start with Ephesians 4 process. God has given offices to the church. He gave them for the sake of equipping the saints for the doing of ministry. Ephesians 1, live the calling that you've been given. All right? So we as a congregation are going through a new season. We're looking for that calling that God has for us in this new day in the community. And I'm gathering my leaders together. We're going to start praying over this. Share the PDF that you'll have, and you're going to share with them then. You have them do the same thing. Who do they know that fits this profile? Who do they know that fits the profile? And you do the same exercise with them. And what you're doing now is you're building out a pool of people. And this is not where you say no. You're saying, okay, God, this is what we're looking for. Who do we know that fits that? And you're going to share the names then with one another. And you now have a larger list than you had when you began of people to pray over. You're going to do that. Then you're going to move this out into the congregation. And we want you to set up a "Is This You" response system. It's a simple way to respond. It could be print, digital, or social. Google Form is a great way if you're running a planning center, and I don't know if you're using that as your CMS or not. We use a thing called Virtuous. It has forms in it. So what you want to do is set up a way for people to respond, because you're going to share the profile in a public way and say, friends, we're looking for this person. Is this you? Is this you? You're passionate about somebody. You've got an idea how to help them. Maybe you've started some stuff in the past. We'd love to know who you are. We'd love for you to respond to that. And again, there's a variety of ways you can do that. in your ministry. Simple ways. You want to make it frictionless for them to respond on paper, and do it in worship. Put it as part of your sermon. Do it in a sermon series. And so what you're doing, you're actually asking people how they would like to serve, and you're looking for the starters, because the starters will find other people to help. You won't have to do it. All right? And then you want to capture their name, their email, their cell phone, and their idea. That's what you want to capture. Who will this help? Most everybody who comes to us with an idea, they have not readily thought through who this will help. They just love the idea. They're in love with the idea. It only works if it helps somebody and people want it. So this will help you preclude some of that going too far down the path. And as a sidebar, because people will say to us, well, I always get, Joe who comes up to me and says, I got this great idea, Pastor. Here's what we ought to do, And we encourage you to say, Joe, that's fantastic. Find 3 other people who will join a team to do that, and we'd love to talk with you. If they can't convince 3 other people to do it, then you shouldn't spend your time, okay? But if they can, then it's worth listening to, and we'll go forward. So use a hoop to show that they are a leader who can recruit some other people with you. So set up an is this your response system, and make sure that whoever sets up the system, you've also got a system in your church of you're going to look at those names and you're going to start monitoring that and you're going to pull them in. And then you're going to roll it out. So share from the pulpit via staff and volunteers and through all your comm channels. So set you a target. We're going to run this for 6 weeks. And this is what we're looking for. Friends, this is who we're looking for. It's coming from the pulpit. They're hearing it all over the place. All right? And you are going to set a 2-week deadline to respond. I can't see that screen, and I can't see this screen, so let's look at it on my phone. And you want to make the sign-up frictionless. And here's the wording for you. This is the wording. You're going to say, as we move forward out of COVID, we want to help the people in our community. But rather than tell you what we're going to do, we want you to tell us what we as a congregation should be doing. Jesus is calling us to care for our community through our individual passion and efforts. If your heart resonates with these profile statements, you'll put those up on the screen. Go to our site and let us know who you are. We commit to pray for your mission and set you up for success. The last 3 are very important. We'll pray for you, we'll give you permission, and we'll set you up for success. You're not just saying, we want you to do it and good luck. Okay, you're saying we're actually going to help you be successful, and that's going to alleviate some of their concern in this as well. Step 5 is you're going to host in-person and virtual gatherings. So these are 1-hour gatherings to answer questions. So you're inviting them to something. So you've now, as you find these people, and friends, we do this, and this works, okay? As you find the people, you're slowly asking them you're doing call to actions. The first call to action is I go fill out the form. The next call to action is I get invited to a 1-hour thing. Could be on Zoom, could be after church, it could be whatever works in your community. And you're saying to them, here's what we're going to be doing. We're down 50%, we're down whatever the percentage is. It's a new day in the ministry, and we're looking to see where God wants us to go through people like you. You are going to be instrumental in how we move forward here in ministry. So they need to hear from you that you believe and you trust them, and you're going to walk alongside of them in this process. You're going to invite everyone on your list from steps 1 and 2. So maybe they didn't respond. They didn't think they were them, but you think they're the right person. You're going to invite them to this event. We'd love for you. We think you have these gifts. We'd love to just talk with you. We'd love to share with you. It's a way to honor them. Most of your entrepreneurial kind of people don't like to serve on boards or committees. It just frustrates them too much. So this is a way to get them in the game in this time of how do we get things going without me having to do it all. You're going to share Ephesians 4 with them and pray over them. And then you're going to have them spend just a few moments, and you got to monitor the time here. Say, hey, tell me who you're passionate about. What would you like to see? And you're inviting them again to participate in this. And then this question is very important for them. What would you need to put your idea into action? What would you need? Most of them will say something like, I need X number of dollars. They're going to jump usually to the money side of things, and we, again, like to push that off. Don't worry about that. What they really need are people, and that's where you're going to ask them and help them on how they're going to move that forward with people. You're going to communicate, you're going to commit to communicate with them of how the congregation is going to move forward with this. And then you're going to thank them for being willing to lead and heed Jesus' call. If you have a worshiping body of 50 people, I would expect you would have, if you'll go through these steps, I would anticipate you would have at least 5 people attend some kind of meeting, about 10%. If you have a congregation of 500 people, the percentage will go down a little bit, but if you're worshiping 500, I would anticipate that you'd have somewhere around 30 to 40 people easily at that meeting. All right? Now, what's important here is you didn't invite me to a meeting to say, I'm looking for children's ministry volunteers. Our children's ministry is decimated. We got to do this again, and I got to fight. That's not why you invited me to the meeting, okay? Now, I may come to the meeting and say, I really have a heart for children, but dude, I just can't do that Sunday morning thing. Well, what would you do? Well, what I would do is an evening, and I would have them over and we'd do a neighborhood thing or whatever, okay? So it's very important that you as the leader don't superimpose what you're hoping to fill your gaps. You're looking for what God is doing and wants to do in this season of time. So pray over the starter profile. Invite others to join you in this. You're going to set up, is this your response system? You want them to take a step and fill it out, write something down. So they've made a little commitment in that. And roll this out to the congregation, invite them to a meeting. So that is how we help find people, all right? Now, I want to kind of break this down a little bit. So could you tell me, in your situation, how many of you are worshiping 50 or less people? In person, 50 or less people in person. How many of you 51 to 100? Okay. 101 to 200 in person. 201 to 400. 401 and above. Okay, so everybody here is worshiping less than 400 people and you're kind of broken up pretty regularly. So if I were in your shoes, and I want to kind of think about this then in terms of the size you are, okay? So first of all, it would be what I would encourage you, and let me say this. During COVID, when COVID hit, our network lost all of the contracts that it had. So we were dead in the water. Because all of our training was in person. So we were like, we were in Detroit, Orlando, New York City, Phoenix, and that's just how we were doing all of our training. So when COVID hit, that was that. By the grace of God, we had received a large gift 3 months before COVID hit. And so God was just incredibly gracious. And we were able to take all of our face-to-face training during COVID, we just hunkered down and converted it all online. So everything we do is online now. Everything we teach and train is available online. we now have a lot of people that want us back because people are like, I'm tired of Zoom and I want you to come and see us, would you please? So what we did is we have donors that helped us take all of our material and make it very, very inexpensive and accessible, because our heart is for churches and our heart is to how to help you think about new ways of growing using entrepreneurship concepts. Doesn't mean you have to go start something expensive. It just means you're looking for the type of people who know how to start and want to start, okay? And you're supporting them well. So what if I were in your shoes, I would find material that is faith-driven, that gets them moving quickly, and results in them successfully starting something that helps people. Now, I'm telling you this because this is what the stuff that we have does, but we're very action-oriented. And I think what I sense from you is probably in your situation, you're like, okay, we want to get back to things here, and we're trying to figure out how to get the ball moving again with people. I would also make sure you get them coaching to help them along the way. Because what you don't want to do, you don't want them to fail fatally and get out of the game. You're trying to help them have some success and fail early and learn, but not fail and get out of the game. All right? So you as the pastor and the senior leaders, you're protecting them from failing too hard. And they need to know that you have their back in this process. So, a church of 200 plus in worship, what I would, and this is, we're just going to do this even less than this. So if you are less than 50 or less than 100, I would suggest that you can go to, if you go to, this is our new website. We have 2 sites now. So some of you have gone to 52.com. If you go to 52.com, you can send your people to 52.com under resources, and there are articles on how to build a team. There are articles on how to communicate. There are people there they can connect with. So that's a resource you can use at 52.com to help them find people that will encourage them along the way. But for the actual training process, for the actual piece of how do I start this new thing and start it well, I would suggest that you go to startnewtraining.com. This is where all of our material is, okay? And when you go to startnewtraining.com, you're going to see the course that we have there is the one that I would suggest if you're worshiping less than 100 people. It's our self-paced course, okay? And there are 12 online modules to help you build, fund, and launch successfully. Now, and the reason we suggest you go here is because you're going to have people, if you're worshiping less than 100, you're going to have people who just want to start some kind of small thing. They just think they want to care for men and dads, and how do they make sure they pull this off? Where they will get out of the game is if they have an idea and nobody shows up, or they have an idea and nobody wants it. So when we help you in our material, it helps them think about who this is for, all right? Because the number one reason churches fail, businesses fail, nonprofits fail is they have something that nobody wants. And as you come out of COVID, a large slice of your people, for right now, have said, I don't want the in-person thing anymore right now. So what you're trying to do is to figure out what do you want and how can we help you. So those who are leading it, we want them to think about who it is that they're called to serve and how they can be engaging these people effectively, okay? So I would suggest you pop to startnewtraining.com, the self-paced. There's 12 modules. There's also an evangelism module for those of you who are saying, you know, we'd love to just to get our people sharing the story of Jesus more effectively. We put that together. It's just a really cool story-driven kind of way of talking about Jesus. So that's another resource that's there for you. There are 52 short 4 to 8 minute videos, so it's very easy to use. There are a number of modules. When you look at it, you can pick and choose the modules that work for you in your setting. But I would suggest that's where, if you have less than 100, I would just start there. If you have something in your ministry, though, that is more extensive, let's say you want to start a whole brand new ministry for children or youth. What we're seeing across the board is that youth ministries have really taken a hit because they're just that whole slice. They went and got their community somewhere else. So if you're trying to think, how are we going to start a whole new ministry that's extensive, and if it's fundamental to who you are as a congregation, I would suggest you consider getting into a cohort of something. Get them in a cohort where they can walk through that together and, again, avoid failure. All right? Another thing that we do, if you're in about a 200-size church and higher, I would the smaller you are, the less you need to worry about some of the change dynamics because you're just in a smaller group. But as you pop over 100 to 200, you need to be thinking a lot about the people who are there and the number of people on your polity and your structure and how they're going to be upset. So there you need to pay attention to change management. So if you're between 100 and 200, we also have a resource that you can use on doing a one-day Clarify Our Calling Leaders Workshop. Again, we just did one of these outside of Austin. It had over 120 people show up in it. Now, this is Texas, okay? But 120 leaders were there, and what the senior pastor told us afterwards is that they were also excited that their congregation cared enough to ask them what they thought. And they were shocked that the congregation actually said, we want to listen to you, and we want to hear what you think. How have you changed, and where do you want to go as a congregation? And it was a phenomenal experience. So if you're between 100 and 200, a workshop like that would be, I think, very helpful. If you're over the 200 and above, then we also have a much more extensive process. And if you're interested in that, we'd love to talk to you about that. But that's where you literally bring the whole congregation along into a new picture and a new future for your ministry. When you do, let me just show you if you're interested in the workshop. So one of the things you can do when we'd love to talk with you. We'd love to give you 20, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever it takes. It's just your situation. You say, here's what I'm facing, here's what I'm wrestling with. We'd love to just listen to you and help you think through that one-on-one. So when you fill out that form online, you're going to get an opportunity to go grab a time on our calendar, and we'll sit and talk with you. One of the things to think about on the workshop that has proven it so effective is that it's asking these leaders 2 core questions. And again, leaders like to contribute. So you're asking them, what do you love about this place and how has it changed? And the second question you're asking them is, what do you think Jesus wants us to look like 5 years from now? It's a vision question, it's a values question. By asking them those 2 core questions, it resonates on their heart, it gets them involved, and they're ready to help you lead this thing forward. So that workshop is also something that, and we can tell you how to do it. It's no problem at all, and you can lead it yourself. But it's a very powerful event for you to jumpstart. So if you're between 100, 200, even 100 to 400, I would strongly encourage you to think about gathering all those leaders as well together. These are just some of the testimonies people have said, made me realize that church growth, this is all post-COVID, made me realize that church growth is still possible and that we don't need to really change what we believe, it's more of what we're doing, okay? It's what we're doing. This particular one here is coming from Kristen. Kristen said, it was awesome to see how God is stirring other church members and how my stirrings collide with theirs to multiply impact. And then Dave, this was a neat comment, helped me rethink who I am and what my mission is in life. It also reassured me that there is energy in the church to revive after COVID This is in Illinois. They were killed. I'm in Illinois. And returned to a fully participative and growing ministry. Thank you. So friends, I can't tell you enough to start with what God has given you right now, but to look for the particular type of person that is wired to help you lead into a new future. Okay? And if you only have 2, you only have 2. If you have 10, you have 10. And then to encourage them and to equip them so that they're effective in how they help bring that about. Let me stop here. What about this is scary or concerning? Anything that's scary or concerning? What are the downfalls of doing what we just said? Yes?
So it's funny, it's actually what you just mentioned, and it's the kind of I do to we do to you do transition. I've been with the church now for a year trying to replant them and revitalize them.
Where are you? I'm sorry, what is your name and where?
Beautiful Savior Lutheran right here in Tempe,
Oh,
Arizona.
okay.
And I love them to pieces, and we've even established like this revitalization team. But every meeting is, okay, Pastor, what now? And so to begin that transition of saying, well, you tell me, and I'll follow where you want to see this go, has been kind of like just difficult because they're mostly boomer and older.
Okay.
I'm a millennial and learning all the time how much of a millennial I actually am. But it's just kind of helping them to see, no, you have ideas, and it's time to start looking at them. So we did, year 1 was all get excited. Year 2, we're doing get out there. But what does that look like?
What is,
We have
right.
no idea.
Yeah, it's what does that look like? And there's an excitement in getting out there that will quickly fade if it fails. Or let me put it this way, if you don't get traction. So you're trying to get traction, okay? And when I go for this kind of a leader, what's really powerful is if I can tap into your passion, I don't have to motivate you. And I oftentimes don't have to manage you. Because you wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, I got to figure this out, because it's who you are. So what we're trying to do is in this new season to just find those individuals. Now, again, going back to that one picture with the church and all these things coming off of it, it's not going to be a silver bullet, most likely. We have seen a couple situations where it does trigger worship growth. Generally speaking, that's not going to turn around your offerings tomorrow. But a lot of us, that's not our issue. The issue is reaching new people, or how do we engage that? That's where it is very effective. So your metrics change. So you as a leader have to say, we're not doing this to tomorrow our worship, next Sunday we'll have 50 more people in worship. It's that we as a ministry want to bless the community and in this new reality of who God's calling us to be. Okay?
I will say though, just kind of as an aside, when you encourage your people to be excited to be the church, growth does happen. Small congregation, when I got there, we were 39 people. We've added 10 in 6 months.
Good for you. Good for you. So it's hard for us to separate at times as pastors and leaders. Conversion is different than coming to my church service. Coming to my church service is a sociological reality. How do I get you to come to my church service? I'm excited about it, right? If I go buy a new car, I tell everybody, I said, this new car, I just got a Tesla. I don't have a Tesla, by the way, but that's what I would buy, right? Oh, I just got a Tesla. It's so cool, man. It just drives itself and yada, 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 yada. As a pastor and leader, sociologically, that's what you're trying to do to have people feel godly pride about their ministry. And they tell people about it, all right? But now, converting them and just deepening them as a disciple is the next phase. But if I can't even gather them there in the first place or reach them. So that's exactly right. When people believe you really care for them and you really want to hear from God through them, and you really do, okay, you can't fake it, right? You can't reach people you hate. They know when you don't really love them, so that's really important. Okay? So it is fearful in turning this thing around and saying, I'm going to not be this, God knows all directive kind of person, but I am going to make sure we're on track, and I am going to protect them, and I'm going to help them be successful, but we're going to look at it differently because I'm exhausted and we just can't. It doesn't look like doing what we did pre-COVID is going to work as well. Somebody else, Adam?
I think one of the things for our church is that you have ministries that are struggling, right? And this all sounds great, but I think for a lot of our leaders, it would sort of be the fear of adding more ministries on
Okay.
top of what we already can't sustain and make work. And so there's a little bit of that hesitancy and also just the fear of can we really sustain new ministries when we have these other ones that have been crippled through COVID and things like that.
So this is a really good point. Thanks for. How many of you would kind of echo that comment? Kind of feel with that? So let me ask you this question: how willing are you to stop doing some of those things? And you may not be, right? When I was leading a congregation, we differentiated between a program and a ministry. A program was something we felt was so paramount to the congregation, we had to staff it. It had to exist. Worship on Sunday morning or whatever has to exist, or else we're not really a church. Okay. In our community, children's ministry on Sunday morning had to exist. Okay, and so we staffed it. But did we need a sports ministry? Not at first. That all started through a volunteer. It grew into where we had to staff it because it became so big. So we had to do it. But that wasn't core to us. So I think this question you're facing is exactly right. Some of the things we were doing, we're having a hard time staffing. And the question I think you have to kind of ask is, are they still so mission critical we have to do them? And I got to figure out how to staff it. Or is there another way to do this that I could help our people embrace? Yes.
Speaking on that, ministry that you feel like you have to do, or it doesn't have to always be the same as you were doing it, like you were just talking your Sunday. If it's failing, and you have some volunteers that say we want to completely change it and maybe move it to another day, and you encourage them, and it can come to the goal that you're looking at, because it happened with us. We had a Sunday school program that was down to 5, and the volunteers said, hey, this isn't working, we're going to change it. We're going to move it to Wednesdays, we're going to do this, we're going to change this whole program. And as this leader said, you're on your mind, we're not going to do, But we said, yeah, go back, we'll hold you up. And they did it, and now we're at 130 kids.
Okay.
Coming up weekly from a program that wasn't failing.
So if I could just do an autopsy or whatever on what you did, you separated who this is for and how we do it. So again, we've been doing ministry a certain way, how we're doing it. But we still love that child, or we still want to care for that child. So we're not losing the who, but we're changing the how. And that's what you as a leader have to decide, is that going to be a way to do it? So we're still going to care for the children. We still feel children's ministry is really, really important, okay? But man, getting young parents to come out on a Sunday morning now, when we can hardly get them in church and do this ministry is maybe not how we're going to do it going forward, okay?
Using the volunteers and understanding the situation of the new parents, and Wednesdays work better.
Yeah, so this is a great example. Let me ask you this question. Who is your customer in children's ministry? Who's your customer? Mom is the customer. Okay? The older the child is, they become the customer. In youth ministry, who's the customer? It's still the parents a little bit, but the youth are actually more the customer because they can decide, I'm going to go do something else. Usually whoever pays is the customer. Preschool, mom. Okay? Children's ministry, parent, usually mom. And so what you're helping these people understand is, if I'm a mom and I want my children to get to know Jesus and I don't feel competent enough to do it, whatever, how can we help you grow in that? But also, what's going to be most convenient for you? Because probably as a mom, I'm going to choose one of my core values is convenience. I'm so busy the rest of the week. I'm so running crazy. I'm gonna choose something that works for my family. So this is why we always start with who. If I'm starting that new ministry, forget about the how, tell me who's it for? And reverse engineer it then for this mom. And see, that's a great example of, for whatever reason, Sunday morning's just not working for me, but a Wednesday evening would be really cool. Okay? Somebody else, other things that concern you. Yes?
Does this ever splinter the vision of the church where it's kind of going off in 10 different directions?
Yeah, it's another great question, okay? So as I shared with you, this is part of a whole thing that if we really dig in and do a whole thing. So a lot of the churches we're working with right now, before this piece, and tomorrow in the workshop that I'm leading, we'll talk about the whole thing, okay? But before this piece is to get with the senior leader, and we help you build a team, about 4 other people, and you take this opportunity to go, okay, let's reevaluate, what do we still value here? And the simple question, if you're trying to figure out what people value, all you have to do is ask them this one simple question. What do you love about this X? And they'll tell you. They'll tell you what they love about it. And that's how you dig out their values, okay? So we help you actually take a step back, do some work with that, and then also say 5 years from now, because it all changed, where does Jesus, we think Jesus wants us to be? And usually in that, especially in people like y'all here at Best Practices, you have a pretty, you probably have a value for community impact, reaching your community, caring for your community. So that's going to probably be part of your vision. And so all of these little hows will probably play in the field. So as the leader, you're trying to set the boundaries of the field. Here's the field we want to play in. Don't care how you play. Here's what it looks like for a win. We want more people to know Jesus. Don't care how you get them there. That's the game. That's a ball's in the net when a person comes to know Jesus. And if you want to start a motorcycle in Arizona, a cannabis motorcycle ministry, well, you could, okay? So the point here is the people you're looking for love that freedom. And they want to understand, because they don't want to cause chaos in their church, but they do want to see things happen. So it does take some work on your part. You've got to be okay with chaos. You got to be okay, but you've already had chaos for 2 years, so you'll be okay, right? It's a good question. Other thoughts or concerns or worries?
Dovetailing on that, I appreciate that question. What is the role of, when you open it up to, I think it's really cool, having it driven by people's own passion, but what if as pastor, spiritual leader, as you were thoughtfully thinking theologically, trying to bring faith and intersect life, thinking through that, and you go, yeah, it's great to have a Texas Hold'em card group, but what do they need? And that transition from, is this a stepping stone to...
That's a great question. The phrase we use, and I've heard people use different phrases, but we look at all of those new, let's just call them expressions, we would call them bridge ministries, okay? You're extending your... See, it goes back to, you and I live in a consumer culture. As a matter of fact, we're all consumers, okay? We're all consumers. And what a consumer culture is, you get to decide what's important. You get to decide what you're going to pay for. I can't tell you what to pay for. I can invite you to, okay? Which means you're going to choose to participate based upon what you think is valuable. And if I do a Texas Hold'em party in my neighborhood, which frankly in Texas works very, very well, okay, especially in rural communities, if I think, you know what, I'm looking for some friends, I like to kind of gamble a little bit, and it's a fun night, sure, I'll come, all right? If you say, well, I'm having a Bible study on Jesus and gambling, okay? I like to gamble, and he probably says it's awful, so I'm not going to come, whatever. So my point in all of this is, I think you and I as pastors and leaders go to the negatives, what if, way too soon, okay? I mean, if you get somebody that comes and says, we want to do a strip club ministry, and we're all strippers, and we think, we want to teach you how to strip better, okay, we've crossed a line. But frankly, I know some wonderful ministries that ministry to sex-trafficked women in those settings, okay? So I just want to, I know we're going to worry about that. I know you're going to worry, we're going to be overwhelmed. Man, just don't worry about that yet, okay? Good question. Anything else? Yes, Josh.
What do you do like with that situation? You get that person, you get them fired up about something, and I've had this a few times, but then they're like, but Pastor, I just don't know that I have the time to do that, or that's
Yep.
just more than I can take on.
And you're going to have that, and that's where we always suggest that your first hoop. So let's say, because matter of fact, one of the churches we're working with this next, actually this weekend they're having one of these events, okay, where they've invited all these people to the room. And what they're going to say to those individuals is, first of all, they're going to invite them, what do you think, what would you like to do, da-da-da-da. Their next call to action is, within 2 weeks, we would love for you to think about who are you going to invite on your team and let us know. And so you're going to have some people who just say, I've got an idea and I'd love to give you my ideas, but I have no desire to do it. That's fine, then God be with you and go on. What I'm looking for are the people who are looking for permission and protection, and they have the time and commitment, and then we're going to pour into you, okay? So I would just love them, and I probably would ask them, so what would it take for you to have the time? What would it take for you to have the time? And see if we couldn't stimulate them a little bit that way. That's a great question, Josh. Yes?
What about a program that may have been existing for a long time, and we have people that are doing it, they're doing it a certain way, they've always done it a certain way, and then you get some new blood because you've done some of this, and there's some people that are passionate about that same thing, but there's like a political, like, it's us against them type of thing that starts to develop perhaps. Or this person says, well, I've been doing this for 20 years, and they've had a passion for it, but the passion may have died, but this new group coming in are a threat to them.
Yeah. Y'all are, again, you're in this season of, so many of you have never seen something this, most of us have never seen something this hard, and just the sheer level of change management acumen it takes. Our mantra is you never denigrate the past. Never denigrate the past. You're standing on the shoulders of somebody. You wouldn't have the building if somebody hadn't paid for it. And you're just the recipient. So never denigrate the past, but your goal is to help people understand they can't live in the past. And what we have found generally, especially if these are older individuals, okay, who have been around a while, when we ask them the question, what do you think Jesus would love this place to look like 5 years from now? And really ask them that question, they almost always answer something like younger. And because they're not stupid, they love kids running around. They love to see families running around. And the second question we ask them is, what do you think it would take to do that? So we're trying to help them understand that it is painful to lose what I've been doing, but also to vote with my feet that I want this future more than I want this. And so if we can help move them there, it's not going to be easy. I begin to be in y'all's shoes is very hard. But that's how we get them moving. And if we can show them some wins and celebrate, that's where we can start to move that way. Okay? If you if you have the chance, so again, would love to, and I will hang around here, but if you, another thing you can do is go to 52.com strategy if you'd like to do that, but you can go to 52.com, again, avoiding, same thing. We would love to help you just think through this, okay? Think through it with your own ministry. If you do find these people, then please, 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 I would love to where you get some of our material and get them in the material, because what it does, it makes them think about the who. It makes them think about the who, all right? So that they start thinking about who is Jesus wanting us, who is he calling me to help reach. And it helps them break down their desire to hold on to form and structure and things like that. Any other questions? What else? Anything else? Other comments or concerns? Yes.
You mentioned very briefly just protecting those who are serving. Can you speak to what that might look like, especially coming out of COVID, where people's metrics have changed so dramatically, and there is the grousing that you hear, at least in our congregation, that the numbers aren't up, blah blah blah. How do you go about, or what would you recommend in protecting those folks who are so vital to the ministry that's taking place?
So just to repeat the question, as you come out of COVID and people are all mourning the fact their church isn't what it used to be. And they've all seen death, and they all fear their church is dying. Okay, so just, again, if we understand that about people, right? And so they're all mourning this. They're all like, and if you could, as a pastor, articulate that for them and help them put words on what they're feeling, that's huge. Counseling 101, okay? That's huge in helping them move through that. But then you've got the people that are actually helping pull these ministries off, and they're probably getting a little tired. And how do you protect them? That was the question. I would love on them a lot. I would invite them to my house. I would host them. I would feed them. I would care for them. I would probably invite them into my inner circle and say, "You guys are so important right now, and I know you're tired. And how can we help you?" And I would also, I think this is where it's important. Again, I don't know your situation, but I think you have to be okay with some things not surviving COVID. Okay? But what you want is the people to survive. The programs can die, but you want the people to survive. So I think that's a great emphasis in how I'm going to care for you as we make these changes. So, you guys and gals, y'all are the change agents that God has kind of put here, and how we're gonna see through. It's a new day. Some of us are 80%. Some of us are 30%. Some, especially in New York State, they won't be back. Okay, but how can we move forward in a new mission-mindedness with a whole group of people that have changed? Let me ask this question. Have any of you found something that's, beside the example we already heard, have any of you found things that are working in children's ministry? I'd love to hear some examples if you've... Okay, so how many of you have a preschool? Okay, so how many of you, your preschools shrunk during COVID? Shrunk. How many of your preschools grew during COVID? The growing ones, what states are you in? Sorry, what? Minnesota? Illinois? Illinois. Idaho. Idaho, what would you attribute the growth to?
We stayed open constantly. We shared values. We were countercultural.
Okay, there was a counterculture. What about in Illinois?
I think it's some state curriculum that came through.
Okay, so change. Minnesota?
Yeah, just the fact that we stayed open through it all.
Stayed open through all.
Same thing.
Same thing. You stayed open. That's a...
Share something that's Northern California, the Bay Area.
Okay.
And our preschool's been very, I'm not a pastor, I'm a lay person, so can't take any
Yeah.
gaff in that. Our preschool's really done well. We're a pretty affluent area, but we don't get even 5% of those parents to participate in our
Right. And worship.
in worship.
Right.
And some of them go other places, but knowing Northern California, it's probably 10-15% of them go someplace else.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a burden, and that revenue runs our church basically. 'Cause
Right.
The other part of it is on a downward trend.
So the issue here is there's a preschool that's very effective, generates money for mission, families from the community, but they don't transfer into the worshiping body. So this is a very standard thing. It's called, if I get you to come to a barbecue, I can't expect you to come to church. If I get you to come to a preschool, I can't expect you to come to church unless I have a very purposeful way of nurturing you into church. Most of us who have preschools or schools don't have this. We just assume it's going to happen. It's very, very purposeful if you're going to bridge that, okay? Very, very purposeful. Now, praise God that you have a preschool that's generating cash for the church can exist, but I would also say you probably have an opportunity to farm that preschool a lot more than you're farming, I would think. I don't know, okay? So that's been our experience is if there's a very purposeful strategy, I'm there, I'm talking about baptism, I'm really involved in how that's going to happen is better. And we can talk more about that too. Yeah, one last question.
I just want to touch on that for a second.
Okay.
So my wife in her new position actually was called to be the relational bridge, the
Okay.
preschool director, but also then DCE for the church. And you don't need to have a professional LCMS certified with a stamp of approval, but
Oh,
using
sure
this
you
kind
do.
of method, I mean, I must be insane, but using this kind of method, identify the people in the congregation who have a love for the school and for young families, and think through what are the events or the ways, the pathways that you can begin to show those families you love them, right? Because ultimately, maybe it's you get the kids to sing one more Sunday a month in church, and that's a really easy way to sneak people in.
So a bigger thing on this, in the feeding of the 5,000, when the disciples come to Jesus and they say, send the crowd away, all right, because they're hungry, what was their picture of the crowd versus their picture of themselves? How did the disciples view themselves in relation to the crowd? So let me say, here's Jesus, here are the disciples, here's the crowd. Who's closer to Jesus in the disciples' mind? Disciples. Who belongs to the church in the disciples' mind? Disciples. In Jesus' mind, who's his people? The crowd. So in the feeding of the 5,000, the community is the church. And if you will treat these ministries like preschool, I don't care what it is, treat them like they already belong. Invite them to everything, tell them about everything, treat them like they already belong. You'll be shocked. Now you got to love them even if they never belong, even if they never believe, but treat them like they already belong. Okay? And so now all of a sudden, if you're this, again, that one slide, you got this church, you got these little things that are happening, and you treat them all like they're part of your church, even if they've never signed a covenant sheet or take the 12 command, whatever confirmation. Treat them like they belong. Yes.
But to throw on top of that, even take what they want to do for the community and help them bring it on, even if they're not part of that church.
Yeah, that's so.
Like you said earlier, they are part of people now today, and they want to feel like they're part of this community, even if they're not a part of your church.
Right.
They want to be there to help you.
Yeah, so one last thing, and then we're going to send you out. The point being is that most of the ideas you will have people bring you, I bet a lot of them you've heard before, and in the community, they're not new ideas. What was lacking is someone to do the idea. And so you don't need people from your church to start a new something. You could use people in the community, and actually, you would find people in the community who want to see it happen as much as you do, okay? And they'll help you and do it. So your sports ministry, we've done reading programs, we've done school kind of ministries, all run by people in the community. You don't have to have the people to do it, but you do have to have the right entrepreneurial kind of leader to pull that off. So thank you guys very, very much. Please, we'd love to talk with you. Sign up, and thank you very much, okay?